Last week we got our first look at BattleBit Remastered's transport helicopters, and it was clear that some work needed to be done. I mean, they went as far as to crash the servers they were on, so yeah, not a perfect first iteration. So fast forward to another week and another playtest, we've had another chance to give these helicopters a go, and as a bonus, get some pretty exciting news from the developers about upcoming content. Let's talk. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we are back in the skies testing out the helicopters of BattleBit Remastered. Alright, so contrary to the last playtest, I actually got a lot of experience in with the helicopters this time around. As they were no longer causing the servers to yeet themselves off a cliff, I was able to spend multiple matches with them in a squad and really push them to their limits. So that in of itself was already a great improvement over our limited time with them last week. But on top of that improved server stability, this playtest marked the first 6-hour session where we had an opportunity to test out the helicopters with some pretty significant balance changes being made to them. As some of you may remember, my feedback from the last session really echoed that the helicopters felt like giant XP pinatas. They were slow, they were extremely susceptible to ground fire, especially from tanks, and even from a self-defense perspective, I struggled to really put the miniguns to any kind of use at all. And well, the developers listened, and boy did they listen good, because in this playtest, these helicopters played much more of a role in the flow of the matches that we played, and were far more effective in their role of moving troops around the battlefield and providing fire support. And the sentiment I echoed in our last video, talking about how much fun I had in the helicopters, well, that was only multiplied in this session tenfold as a result. Seriously, I had the dumbest grin on my face when testing these things out in the session because, above all else, they were so much fucking fun to romp around in. Big credit in particular has to go to a fellow Australian BattleBit Remastered content creator by the name of Big Bodster, who is flying the helicopter in this particular match you're watching here. I've left a link to his content in the description down below, and I highly recommend you check it out. But I spent the majority of this match in particular door gunning for him, and it featured us dogfighting with enemy helicopters, doing gun runs on enemy positions, dropping friendlies off in key objectives, the works. And while it wasn't the most efficient way to play the game as far as getting kills was concerned, I cannot begin to describe just how much fucking fun I had here in this match in particular, and in subsequent matches with other pilots from, say, the DKC clan which I was running with in the playtest. So general sentiment aside, it begs the question, what exactly was changed to these helicopters to make them more effective? There's quite a laundry list of changes here, so I'm going to highlight some of the more important ones. As far as the balance to the helicopters and the piloting experience of them was concerned, mouse control was improved for pilots, the drag felt on the flight model was reduced by 50%, and the horizontal velocity was increased slightly. The pilot camera was moved closer to the window to make it easier to see out of the windshield, and a new free look mechanic was added when a pilot holds down the right mouse click button. And in addition, pilots can now also invert the helicopter controls via a toggle in the game's options menu, all of which sound like solid features for the piloting side of the game based on my reading. Truth be told, I've never had a chance to fly these vehicles prior to or after these updates, so I'm really lacking some context in how they feel to fly at this stage, but based on my experience of being flown around in these things, they definitely felt like they were a bit faster and a bit more responsive in this version of the game. Some of the feedback I heard from people who did fly them quite regularly is that they definitely still have some work to be done in the inertia department and in the momentum department, but this was certainly a good step in the right direction as far as I understand. But an area of the helicopters where I do have some experience with is with the door gunning positions on the helicopters, and the following changes were made to this side of things. Minigun damage was increased from 10 to 15, which may not sound like a lot, but actually reduces the required shots to kill on an infantry target from 10 to 7, which is a pretty significant impact there. Minigun muzzle velocity was increased from 600 meters per second to 800 meters per second, greatly improving your ability to track moving targets. The horizontal angle limits for miniguns was significantly improved to give you a bit more freedom in angle of engagement when, the helicopter is achieving strange maneuvers. A zoom function was added to the minigun by holding the right mouse button, which also allows you to keep the minigun spooled up even when you aren't firing it, which is a huge quality of life feature comparatively for keeping these things viable while not churning through ammo just to, keep yourself combat ready at a given time. In the first playtest, there were tons of situations where I would, stop engaging a particular infantry target, but then I'd have to spool up the gun again before I could engage the next one I saw, but if the helicopter was moving fast enough, then, well, the minigun wouldn't even spool up in time to engage that target in the first place. So that was probably the best change they've made so far as the general usability of the miniguns was concerned. And on top of that, the core accuracy of the miniguns was improved as well. We've got no hard numbers that indicate how much it was improved by, but there was certainly an improvement made. Now, look, I get it. These are transport helicopters by nature. They are designed for getting players around the map and inserting players into key objectives at the right time to swing the game in your team's favor. They aren't meant to be these quote-unquote offensive vehicles that lay waste to everything below it. In saying that, I do believe that these vehicles should be able to defend themselves, which involves laying some effective fire down against infantry that are firing at these helicopters from below. And I reckon we're in that sweet spot now. Yes, the miniguns definitely feel a lot more usable by comparison to where they once were. Everything from the damage buff to the quality of life improvements has brought about some extra oomph to them in all the right places, which is fantastic. But in saying that, they still do take some nuance and some accuracy to use, and tracking targets with them while you're in a fast-moving helicopter makes them difficult to just pick up and use out of the gate. But should you get the perfect strafe on a few targets, you'll be laughing all the way to the KDR bank. They are certainly a step in the right direction here without breaking the bounds of being ridiculously overpowered as of yet. In this playtest, I was confident in my ability to actually score some kills on targets with the miniguns, and that went a long way in us staying in the air for longer. Speaking of which, there were a couple of additional changes that are worth highlighting here that improved the overall balance surrounding helicopters. For one, main battle tank cannons have had their maximum elevation changed from 40 to 20 degrees, which is a change that may sound a bit strange to include in a helicopter vehicle, but it's a change that helps to alleviate that MBTs were being used as a glorified anti-aircraft platform, which I think is a good step in the right direction to helping the overall game balance. It's still possible to shoot down a helicopter with an MBT if they get too close to the ground, but it's not as, applicable to as many situations now. And in addition, repair stations were also added near helicopter landing pads in the main spawn, giving helicopters ample opportunity to repair and rearm themselves after some time in combat, which without question was very, very helpful in a lot of situations in this playtest for us. All in all, the helicopters in BattleBit are feeling a lot more effective and better involved in the game flow now. And that's not to say that they are dominating the play space either. I managed to shoot a couple down as an infantry player with RPGs, which was an enjoyable yet rewarding experience when I was able to pull it off, and a couple of my pilots on a couple of different maps were making the point that tanks were shooting them down a lot thanks to the way in which the terrain elevation changed throughout the map. So it's clear we've made some very important steps in the right direction with these changes, while ensuring that these helicopters don't break into a power creep status. And all in all, it really feels like BattleBit is continuing to cement itself as a combined arms game without breaking the balance and ruining the experience for certain playstyles, which is all good stuff. But we aren't done here yet, ladies and gentlemen, not at all. As I said in the intro to this video, we've had some news on some upcoming content that I think the flybirds in this community in particular are going to like to hear. If you partook in the most recent playtest, you might have seen a couple of scout helicopters or Littlebirds flying around the map. This marks the developers' first look into adding additional types of helicopters beyond, the standard 12-man transport helicopters that we've seen so far. I didn't get a chance to fly around in these things during the playtest, but man, looking at them from afar, they zipped around the battlefield like nothing else. Little fucking speed demons they were. But they obviously were very susceptible to ground fire, and at this stage, the mobility was what was really keeping them in the game, because again, if they got hit by an RPG, they were down pretty much straight away. And in this playtest, they were also only used for transportation purposes. They were not armed at all. However, lead developer Mr. Okidoki has confirmed on the BattleBit Remastered Discord that military versions of these helicopters are coming as potentially soon as next week, sporting minigun armaments. which, yes, marks the first offensive-focused aerial vehicle to come to the game. Unfortunately, there's a good chance that I'll miss out on the next playtest due to some scheduling conflicts, but I am both beyond excited and cautiously optimistic for the integration of these Littlebirds, these military Littlebirds that being, to the game. Getting the balance right is going to be a real challenge. As we all know, in, say, Battlefield games, offensive-based air vehicles can completely dominate a server when crewed by the right team. But the BattleBit developers have also understood an immense maturity in balancing their vehicles and ensuring that they don't go as far as to power creep the rest of the playstyles out of the game. Once again, BattleBit continues to implement new mechanics and polish that hones the experience that little bit further, and I cannot be more excited to see how things continue to develop with the iteration of these Littlebird helicopters. Hopefully they get it right the first time around, but again, we're still playtesting, so, you know, this is the time to get it wrong, if any. But folks, with all of that said, I want to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. What were your thoughts on the BattleBit Remastered helicopters with this version of the playtest? And in addition to that, are you excited to see Littlebirds come to the game with offensive armaments? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, which let's be honest, if you've gotten this far, you probably have, hit that like button as it does go a long way to supporting the channel. And if you're new here and you want to see more content from me, consider subscribing, as we do run a lot of streams right here on YouTube and release all of our video content, so a subscription does keep you up to date. As always, my social media links are also linked in the description down below, and should you want to support the channel further, well, consider a channel membership. Once again guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care guys, have a good one.